Welcome to another deep dive today. We're going to be looking into the story of Abraham and Sarah. And for our source material today, we're using a YouTube video called Abraham and Sarah, official short film.
Okay.
It's from the channel Messages of Christ. And I think this story is just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a story of faith and sacrifice and destiny. And I can't wait to kind of get into it.
Yeah, me too.
So the story starts with this really intense desire that I think a lot of us can relate to, even today, which is Abraham's desire for a son. And, you know, when I was watching the video, I was so struck by how desperate he seemed in his prayer.
Yeah.
And he even offers a sacrifice, which I felt like kind of foreshadowed the theme of sacrifice that we see throughout the whole story.
Absolutely. And you know, that desire for an heir back then was even more amplified.
Right.
When you think about the cultural context, sons were essential for inheritance. They carried on the family name and they provided security. So to be childless, it carried this huge burden.
Yeah.
Both socially and personally.
Absolutely.
So it makes Abraham's plea even more poignant.
And then we get to this really pivotal moment where God responds by establishing a covenant with Abraham. Can you explain a little bit about the significance of this covenant?
Well, the covenant, it signifies this binding agreement between God and Abraham.
Okay.
And God's promising not just one son, but like countless descendants, like an entire nation.
Wow.
And the video illustrates this beautifully by using that imagery of the stars in the sky.
Oh, yeah. The visuals are just breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's almost like God is saying, look up Abraham and try and count the stars. That's how many descendants you're going to have.
Exactly. And to solidify this whole new future that God is promising. He even changes Abram's name to Abraham.
Okay.
And it kind of signifies that shift in his identity and this destiny full of possibilities.
So we have this promise, right? This incredible promise.
Right.
But then the story takes this unexpected turn because Sarah, Abraham's wife, she can't conceive and she comes up with a plan.
Yeah, a very human plan.
A very human plan.
Yeah.
So she's unable to have children herself.
Right.
And she suggests that Abraham have a child with Hagar, her maidservant.
Yeah.
And this is such a turning point in the story for me because it raises all these questions about, you know, human intervention in God's plan.
Right.
What do you think about her decision?
It's a really complex decision. I think it reflects the cultural norms of the time. Obviously, Sarah's desperation to have a child.
Of course.
But maybe even this desire to participate in fulfilling God's promise.
Yeah.
You know, even if it means taking things into her own hands.
It's so interesting to me how this one decision kind of sets off all these other events that shape the rest of the story.
Absolutely. And the immediate consequence is the birth of Ishmael,
right?
Abraham's son with Hagar.
So on the surface, it seems like the fulfillment of the promise, right? But I feel like this is just one chapter in a much larger story.
You're right. It's crucial to remember that God's plans often work on a different timeline than our own. And, you know, as the video emphasizes, this is not the end of the journey.
So then God reaffirms his covenant with Abraham and specifically promises him a son with Sarah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
God's reinforcing that his plan will happen according to his timing and his design, regardless of human efforts to, you know, try and control the outcome.
And Sarah's reaction when she finds out, I have to admit, I chuckled.
Yeah.
She laughs.
It's hard to blame her.
I mean, considering her age, it makes sense.
It does, but I think that laughter, it speaks volumes.
Yeah.
It's not just amusement.
Right.
I think it highlights that tension between our limited human understanding and the infinite possibilities of God's power.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that God often operates beyond anything that we could ever imagine or come up with.
And then defying all odds, Sarah conceives and gives birth to Isaac.
A name that means laughter.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence.
Oh, wow.
The name Isaac directly connects back to Sarah's disbelief.
Wow.
It underscores just how miraculous his birth is.
The filmmakers really didn't miss a detail.
No, they didn't.
You would think that things would calm down a little bit at this point, but this is where the story really takes its most dramatic turn. God instructs Abraham to sacrifice Isaac.
This is the most challenging part of the story.
It's the part that always leaves me speechless. I mean, to be commanded to sacrifice your own child?
I know.
The son you longed for, prayed for, loved fiercely.
Right.
I think the video really captures the emotion of this test so well.
It does. And, you know, this test, It was about more than just the physical act.
Right.
It reveals just how deep Abraham's faith was.
Mm-hmm.
It shows his willingness to surrender everything to God.
And he doesn't even tell Sarah the whole truth.
Oh, yeah?
He just says that they'll return with Isaac.
Right.
Which, that just adds to the tension of the whole thing.
It does this journey to Mount Moriah. It becomes more than just a physical journey.
Yeah.
It mirrors our own journeys of faith,
Mm-hmm.
filled with doubt and fear, and then that unwavering obedience.
Mm-hmm.
And it all leads up to this one moment.
So they reach Mount Moriah, and Abraham builds the altar, and he binds Isaac,
Yeah.
and then he raises the knife.
Mm.
What happens next?
Just as Abraham is about to strike, God intervenes.
I swear I hold my breath every time I hear this part of the story.
I know it's intense. And it's important to remember that this wasn't about God needing a sacrifice.
Okay.
This was about showing just how strong Abraham's faith was, his willingness to surrender absolutely everything to God.
Yeah.
And that act establishes Abraham as this, paragon of faith for all the generations that come after him.
And then God provides a ram caught in a thicket to be sacrificed instead.
Right.
I mean, it's such a powerful image.
It is. It represents a substitute for Isaac, and it's a sign of God's mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And, it could even foreshadow future sacrifices in religious traditions.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, this act of providing a substitute sacrifice, it resonates with a lot of different faiths.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you think about the nature of atonement and sacrifice and this balance of justice and mercy in a higher power.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
Wow, there's just so many layers of meaning to this story.
I know, right?
It really challenges you to think about your own beliefs
Yeah.
and your limitations, and that symbol of the ram, the idea of substitution and atonement. It's so powerful.
It really is. And it makes you think about the sacrifices that we're willing to make in our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not, literal sacrifices like that,
Right.
but sacrifices of our time or our comfort or even our own desires
Right.
for something bigger than ourselves.
And we've been talking a lot about Abraham, but I keep thinking about Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she goes through infertility.
Mm-hmm.
She suggests Hagar as a surrogate, and then she experiences this miraculous birth of Isaac.
I know, what a journey.
Talk about a roller coaster of emotion.
It's easy to overlook Sarah's experience
Right.
when you're focusing so much on Abraham's actions.
Yeah.
But her journey is just as important.
Mm.
Her story touches on the complexities of faith, the struggle of trusting in God's timing and the strength it takes to face those unexpected turns in life.
I love that moment when she laughs when she's told she's going to have a child.
I know, it's such a human response.
It is. It's so real.
Especially considering her age and the pressures of society back then.
Right.
But it makes you think about how often we try to put limits on what we believe God can do.
Exactly.
That laughter, it's such a good reminder that God's plans often go way beyond anything we can understand or expect.
It encourages us to stay open to those miracles.
Yeah.
Even when they seem impossible.
Absolutely.
And speaking of impossible, that command to sacrifice Isaac,
Yeah.
it's so hard to wrap your head around.
It really is.
It makes you think about obedience and faith in a whole new way.
That part of the story, it's been debated for centuries.
I can imagine.
Some people see it as the ultimate act of obedience.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham was willing to do anything,
Yeah.
even when faced with this horrible choice.
Yeah.
But other people have a really hard time with it.
Mm-hmm.
They can't understand why God would ask for that.
The video does such a good job of showing the emotion of that moment.
Oh,
You see the agony on Abraham's face and the fear in Isaac's eyes.
Right.
And it reminds you that faith isn't always easy.
No, it's not.
It involves dealing with some really difficult emotions and moral questions.
It's not about blind obedience. It's about trusting in a power that ultimately provides and protects,
Right.
even when you can't see the way forward.
Mm-hmm.
And, that ram being provided as a substitute, it really embodies that idea of provision and mercy.
It's amazing how this one story has resonated with so many different faith traditions.
I know, it's incredible.
It really touches on universal human experiences.
Right.
The longing for family, the struggle with faith, and the sacrifices we make for what we believe in.
This story, it goes beyond just one religious perspective.
Right.
Abraham is revered in Judaism and Christianity and Islam.
Wow.
His story is really a cornerstone for understanding faith and surrender.
I think it's incredible how a story this old can still be so relevant to people from all different backgrounds.
It's because it speaks to those universal human experiences, like you said. The longing for family, the struggles of faith, the willingness to sacrifice, that hope for a brighter future. Those are things we all connect with.
As we go deeper into this deep dive, what parts of the story are standing out to you?
Well, this story, it doesn't give you easy answers. It really shows you the complicated and messy and even paradoxical nature of faith.
Yeah.
It's not always neat and tidy.
It's thought-provoking, for sure.
Absolutely.
It makes you think and question. And ultimately, I think it helps you deepen your own understanding of faith and the challenges that come with it.
Right.
It's definitely a story that stays with you. What about you, listener? What are you thinking?
What's standing out to you?
What questions are coming up for you? We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
The longing for a son, the covenant, the birth of Isaac, and that ultimate test of faith.
Yeah.
What an incredible journey.
It is.
As we start wrapping things up, what are your thoughts on the lasting impact of this story?
It's a story that has really stood the test of time. It continues to shape the way we understand faith and sacrifice even today.
It's not just some ancient story. It's like woven into the fabric of our culture and beliefs.
Abraham is often called the father of faith.
Oh, wow.
And his story really provides this powerful example of what it means to trust and obey even when things are uncertain or difficult.
Yeah.
His willingness to sacrifice Isaac even though God stopped him.
It's become this really important example of surrender and devotion.
It makes you think about your own life.
Yeah.
What are you willing to sacrifice for what you believe in?
Right.
How do we balance our human logic with the mysteries of faith?
Those are questions that have resonated with people for centuries. And this story, it doesn't give us easy answers.
It doesn't.
It really invites us to lean into the mystery, wrestle with the complexities, and engage with the messy realities of faith.
It's such a personal story.
It is.
But also universally relatable. I mean, we've all experienced longing and doubt.
Yeah.
And we've all had to make tough choices.
Right.
So even though it's set in a different time, it still speaks to our human experience.
I think it's a good reminder that faith isn't just a set of beliefs. It's an active journey.
Right.
One that's full of challenges and triumphs.
Yeah.
And this constant learning and growing.
It takes courage and a willingness to trust.
Even when things seem impossible.
That there's something bigger than us at work.
And that force that we see in the story of Abraham and Sarah, it provides and protects.
And ultimately blesses.
It blesses those who trust and obey. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. What resonated with you the most? What challenged you? What inspired you?
How can their story help you on your own journey of faith?
Take some time to reflect on these questions.
Maybe even watch that video again.
It's a timeless story, full of wisdom and insight.
It offers guidance and inspiration for anyone seeking a deeper understanding of faith and sacrifice.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking those truths that light the way forward.